Hello, welcome to this episode of the Martial Truth podcast, episode 70. Pretty amazing as far as I'm concerned. All right. Well, we've got some interviews coming up down the road. All right, so just keep those in mind. And today I'm going to talk about my first trip to Okinawa in 1991. As always, please, if you like the videos, subscribe to the channel. Click that like button. That like button is very important. Helps with the YouTube algorithm. Consider becoming a member. It's only $2.99 a month. There's a lot of material there. Stuff's being added all the time. Yeah, I appreciate all of you guys. We've blown by 14,000 members. Next on to 15,000 members, all right? And just keep things going. While this is being broadcast, I'll be on my way back from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the most recent Isshin-Ryu World Karate Association Championships held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this year. Several times Pittsburgh's hosted it. Long Isshin-Ryu tradition there. Hopefully that'll have gone well. I hope it went well for the organizers. And the next one in 2 years supposed to be in Chennai, India. So that ought to be interesting, all right? I'm hoping to be able to go. So without further ado, I want to bring up my first trip to Okinawa in 1991. So for this podcast, what made me decide to do it is I found this book, okay? So this is the book, a little booklet I took with me when I first went to Okinawa in 1991. Now, my trip to Okinawa in 1991 came about because I had had a falling out with my first instructor, not a good guy, and I'd left. And I knew that he would be trying to create problems for me in the martial arts world. So within a few weeks, I decided to get on a plane and go to Okinawa. So some funny things with that is, I had already known Master Shimabuku. I met him as a brown belt in 81. And then in 85, I spent a couple of hours at my first instructor's home with Master Shimabuku talking, just the two of us talking. Everybody else was drinking a lot. He's not a big drinker. I don't drink. So we just sat and I had a great conversation with him for two hours. And for me, it was great. I'm speaking with the headmaster of Isshin-Ryu. We talked about everything, not just karate, and it was a great experience. So he knew who I was. He knew I had a dojo at the time in Manhattan. 2 nights a week I was teaching. And so I decided to go to Okinawa. So initially I sent him a letter and I tried calling with the phone number and the address I had. Never got a response. Well, I just said, screw it. I got a friend of mine's Japanese mom. I told her what town the dojo was in. I said, could you find a hotel for me? And she did. She found the Hotel Kasuga Kanko. And I lucked out because that turned out to be a good friend of Master Shimabuku's. And the dojo was in the dojo was in walking distance of the hotel. So, I got to Okinawa, and the first day he pulls up in his car. I'm standing outside the dojo with a couple of students, kid students, right? And he gets out and he says to me, "Oh, Michael, long time no see. 1985. It's now 1991." He goes, "Why are you in Okinawa?" And I said, "Oh, Sensei, I came to train. I came to train with you." All right. He goes, "Oh, okay." He goes, "No letter, no phone call?" And I showed him the number and the address I had. And he goes, "Oh, old address, old phone number. I'll give you a new one." Okay. So we started training in the dojo. In class, I want to say class was probably 2 hours back then. A lot of children, students, young kids up through teenagers. A couple of nights there were some adults there, but it's mostly young kids there at the time. And at the time, they were preparing for the Okinawan championships. Okay, we did the same old stuff, Kihon basics. We started off with a 15-minute run. That's the warm-up. That's the warm-up Master Shimabuku does. He likes to run. He's a jogger. I mean, when I hosted the last World Championships with my student Ramatha Sensei in London, he was going out every morning and going for a run. Okay, this is in 2019. So he's been an avid runner for a long, long time. So he does that as his warm-up. And you're jogging for 15 minutes. So, for me, it's probably was at least a mile, if not more. All right. And by that time, it's Okinawa. It's kind of warm. This was in May. So it's good warm up. And we started doing everything else. And the class basically consisted of the same stuff, basics, kata. The young kids sparred, and we did some weapons. All right. And that was how the first class went. And after the first class, he took me to a restaurant and we sat down. And what I did was I kept a journal of my first visit to Okinawa. It's the only time I kept a journal of my visit to Okinawa. And finding this a few weeks ago as I was looking for something else and reading through it, and I realized, boy, there's a lot of interesting little things in here that, again, I hope you find interesting. I mean, I found them interesting, and they were very important to me as far as my progression in Isshin-Ryu and how I practice my Isshin-Ryu. All right. So, initially what he says to me in the restaurant is we began to talk about Isshin-Ryu and Karate-Do as a way of life. Okay, so that's one of the first things he says. I had asked him, what should I call him? And he said that him and I are both sensei, but we must always try to get better. There is always room for improvement. And I'll add, I remember him saying, well, you're Nidan, I'm 10th Dan. We both have to train. We both have to get better. All right. And then he mentioned some other things that I found were kind of interesting. He said, too many sensei come to Okinawa and are more interested in taking pictures and talking nice and bringing a gift. All right. But this is not what sensei is interested in. Most important thing for him is effort. And I heard this word a lot in 91 when I was there. And I even wrote in the book in capital letters with dashes between the word effort. Okay. I even put it right there. And, I realized, so, for me, I didn't go to take pictures. I went there to work out. All right. So, initial night, he made some corrections on me that were profound corrections. I'm not going to get into them. It's not important. I've probably mentioned it in other podcasts. But made correction on my punch, corrected my posture, corrected my Seiyuchin stance, right? Literally said to me, why are you doing old man stance? So I was too upright in Seiyuchin. He made me drop down low. He says, you a young man, you do young man stance. And let me tell you, working that stance for 2 months, the next 2 months after that, my legs will forget it, killing me. But once I got used to it, I realized how much stronger it made my legs. So if you're young, you want to be in that nice low Seiyuchin stance, all right? So he also said to me, it's very important that instructors must lead by example. Senseis must show control in life. And I put in parentheses, drinking, eating, etc. Okay? So he's basically telling me, without telling me, that he knows why I've left my first instructor. Okay? But he's not naming any one individual. He's just teaching me. And what he's doing here, I felt, was he was guiding me on how I must move forward. And I think he's basically saying to me that you just left a bad situation. Remember why you left that situation and don't be like that. If you're like that, your students will leave you too. And look, we all have students leave for all kinds of reasons. You're not going to teach as long as I do, as long as some of the senior senseis do, and no students are ever going to leave. They're all going to love you to death. It's just not the way it works, okay? But, for me, I've been lucky. I have some students that are with me almost 40 years now, all right? A lot that are with me almost 30, 25, 20, okay? And students that just started with me in the last few years out here at my new dojo in Arizona, all right? So he also said, if a sensei drinks too much and gets fat and does not train, the students will not follow them. So again, basically giving me a guideline. All right, Mike, you just left a certain situation, okay? Make sure training is always paramount. Make sure teaching. Do a good job of training. Work hard. Lead by example. Don't be the guy, the fat sensei that just stands up there and counts, okay? And believe me, we all know we've seen plenty of them, okay? And if you're offended by that, not my problem. I'm not the one that's fat. I'm the one trying to lead by example, okay? He mentioned that he'll help me, but I have to communicate with him, which I have all these years. At the time, he said there were over 800 Isshin-Ryu dojo worldwide, and he listed, rattled off a bunch of countries: USA, Canada, England, Mexico, South America, Israel, Italy, China, Japan. At this time, Japan 2. At this time, Okinawa 6 dojo. We know, sadly, that's not the case anymore. All right. He even mentions Iran, India, and Africa. All right. Again, I asked him about how to teach Isshin-Ryu, and Sensei said, best teach Seisan, Seiuchi, Nahanchi, Wansu, Shinto, San, Shin. Then Tokumini no Kun and Chatnyara no Sai. And he said, this is for Shodan. Okay? And, he mentioned minimum for Shodan 8 kata, but 10 is best. All right? Like in my dojo, I do all 8 hand kata and 2 weapons kata for Shodan. All right? He told me that Kobudo could be taught at the brown belt level, which the dojo I came out of, Kobudo was like this thing was, oh no, you have to be Shodan, you have to be a black belt to learn Kobudo, okay? Or, right before black belt, you learn Kobudo. All right. I asked him what weapons make up Isshin-Ryu, and what weapons kata, and his answer surprised me. He said bosai, tuifa, and nunchaku. So the nunchaku surprised me. And I said to him, well, what kata? And he mentioned the 2 sai kata. He doesn't teach Kian no sai anymore. All right. He mentioned the 3 bo kata we're all familiar with. And when I asked him about tuifa, I said, Sensei, what's the tuifa kata? And he said, Hamahiga no tuifa. So I said to him, Sensei, what about chifa? He goes, chifa? No such kata. Hamahiga no tuifa is the Isshin-Ryu kata. Okay, so all my Isshin-Ryu friends still referring to it as Chifa. I hate to tell you, but you're wrong. It was a mistranslation of the 66 film, okay? Because the person translating it didn't speak Hogan or Uchinaguchi, the Okinawan language. Tuifa is a Hogan word, okay? So they thought he was saying Chifa, but he was saying Tuifa, okay? So there's no such kata as chifa. It's hamahiga no tuifa. Okay, but feel free. Some people think the earth is still flat. All right. He said all students are individuals, and I asked him about like women training, and he said, well, it's different. Women are different from men. And I said about young kids, and he said, because I saw some kids 11, 12 years old in his dojo had black belts. He said it's different. They're all different. I asked him, what if an older person starts at 70? He says it's different. Michael, everyone's different. No 2 black belts are exactly the same. Okay? The first dojo I trained in, I constantly heard a woman had to be as strong as a man to make black belt. Okay. Not every man is as strong as the man next to him. This idea is just incredibly stupid. All right? I don't even want to dignify it. Okay, but I know you'll find it hard to believe. The first dojo I trained in had virtually no female students. Virtually none. Okay? Low kicks are for old men. And he said high kicks should be done in the basics. Okay? And kata for exercise only. Exercise only. Kicks should be thrown lower in tournament and in self-defense. So he's saying you can kick high if you want to work your leg muscles, stretch those legs, okay? And I kick high sometimes in the kata. I mean, I'm going to be 61 in a few weeks, all right? I still try to kick head height sometimes. Why? Can I still do it? I'm getting older, right? So I want to see my legs, right? Important, a lot of repetitions of the basics. Focus point on the punch is chest high. He told me it was a line directly across the nipples on a male, okay? Doesn't have to be to the center of the body. Could be straight out in line with the shoulder, okay? Both were acceptable. He said combinations, working combinations are very important. He said 2 ki for short kata and 3 ki for long kata, all right? And he said ki at middle and end of kata. He said ki must come from the hara or the tanden and not the voice box, okay? In self-defense, again, these are all things Master Shimabuku told me the first time I visited him on Okinawa. In self-defense, one must be able to fight in all directions. Many think they can, but this is not true. It takes many years to be able to fight in all directions. Again, going back to the Kempo Gokui, the body must be able to change direction at all times. The person's unbalance is the same as a weight. He told me many different things with the various kata I worked on him with. And I worked on many of the kata that first trip. We didn't go over all of them, but I worked over many of them. Okay. My last day, we spent a lot of time on Sanshin kata. It's interesting. He mentions things like try doing vertical fist punch and muscle block instead of the twist punch and bone block. Fist should be even with the shoulder when it comes out. At focus point of punch, opposite block tense, then both arms move into block position and tense. Breath control, very important, okay? So he mentioned that when you're doing these last moves in Sanshin, he said you can do those as many times as you want. I know when I was there, he said 3 steps forward and 3 steps back, okay? Also, the way he tensed was not like the way I saw a lot of first-generation students tensing, with that crazy straining or the tensing the muscles. Very similar to the way Sensei Harrell and also Sensei Tayani from Gojuru taught me, which not that crazy tension, all right, more of a firmness, okay. That's how he showed me, all right. That time I went, he told me I'd been knee down a long time. He wanted me to test for Sandan. I tried to turn him down, and he told me in no uncertain terms that I was testing. So I did the test. The sai I used probably came up to about here on me because I didn't have my sai. I was borrowing a pair from them. They were very small, so I probably did the worst Chatanyara no sai kata I've ever done. At the end, he sat there with a clipboard, and at the end, he told me I'd passed with an 81. And I just stood there and kind of looked at him because I didn't even know what to do. And he goes, okay, go practice. And then I went off and kept practicing with the class and just working on stuff, all right? He told me that I must teach strong Isshin-Ryu and put in much effort. He told me I don't have to teach Isshin-Ryu the way he does or the way other Isshin-Ryu senseis do. He said I should train with everyone in Isshin-Ryu that I thought was better than me or knew more than me and create my own strong Isshin-Ryu. I never had a sensei tell me this. My first sensei was like, oh, I know everything. You don't have to go to the Angi Weizu seminar. Oh, why do you have to go and do that? Because there's nothing they can teach you that I can't, which was total bullshit, okay? I'd barely seen the guy doing Isshin-Ryu kata over the 11 years I was there, all right? So what's he talking about, all right? And this, to me, was the most profound thing that Master Kichiro Shimabuku said to me. He basically said, and I remember he told me, if you see something I do, Mike, that you like, do it. If you see something I don't like, don't do it. Make your own strong Isshin-Ryu. That's what I want you to do. Okay? And that was, to me, a game changer. A game changer. Because now I went out and I trained with so many of the first generation students. Now listen, some I trained with, a bunch. Others I met once or twice, or some I met once, okay? But I still was exposed to them, got to ask them questions, learn things from them. And some of those things I included in my Isshin-Ryu repertoire. And some things I didn't like, I pushed to the side, right? But that, being told that by the headmaster to go out and make your own strong Isshin-Ryu, okay, was profound. Because frankly, even, many of the people still doing Isshin-Ryu are still doing Seisan the way they did it when they learned it 40 years ago. There's been no change. It's still the same thing, all right? And that's not what Isshin-Ryu should be. There should be an elevation of ability, of knowledge, all right? On Bobo and Bosai Kumite, he told me that you can substitute techniques. So in other words, we've seen the Bobo and the Bosai Kumite that the Marines made and that has stayed in Isshin-Ryu, okay? And then there's the ones that Tatsuo supposedly created, which are very basic, like most of the other Kobudo schools, all right? But I said to him, I said, so Sensei, what do you mean? He says, well, you learn the original techniques and then you change it. Take a different technique from a kata and put it in the Bobo Kumite, which again is what most Kobudo dojo do on Okinawa. If you study Matayoshi Kobudo, most of the Matayoshi dojo, each one has different partner practice, partner drills, because each dojo makes their own. Okay, so that was great that he told me that. All right, and he told me there's no nunchaku kata in Isshin-Ryu, but there are nunchaku techniques. Okay, now in the recent book by McCarthy Sensei on Kion, it says in there that Kion taught nunchaku techniques. Now, I don't know of any first-generation student that ever saw Tatsuo use nunchaku. But this is what, Kichiro Shimabuku Sensei told me. All right? And when I asked him, well, if there's no kata, what's the best way to practice? He said, practice striking objects. And I took him at his word. Would go out to my mother's house in Pennsylvania, small dead tree out front, and I would strike it with a nunchaku as hard as I can. And believe me, the first few times I did it, didn't go well. Nunchaku bounced back, cracked me, hit me here, hit me there. But eventually I understood how I had to do it. All right. I will say that recently I did create a nunchaku kata for Isshin-Ryu. This is an original kata. It's not based on any of the other kata. All right. I have a tremendous background in Kobudo, and I did it mostly for my own students, okay, who were very excited about the fact that I did that, and very happy to learn it. Okay. And if others in Isshin-Ryu are interested in learning it, I could put a video out there, so you can get back to me and let me know on that. But again, I did it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to give something back to Isshin-Ryu. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to create an Isshin-Ryu kata. The one that Master Uezu does, is very basic, and it's from a Japanese Kobudo, the Sakagami group in Okinawa, who study with Taira, but, it's a very basic kata. And we teach that kata to our kids in our Isshin-Ryu class. But the kata I made, little more dynamic, has many, many different nunchaku techniques, some from Matayoshi, some from other schools, all right, and some from that kata that Uezu Sensei does. So I picked a bunch of different techniques and put it together in a pattern. So just thought I'd mention that. Sensei mentions that joint locks and striking vital points are best for police officers for self-defense. He told me he starts to teach self-defense at green belt. Okay, so that's basically, my journal from my first trip to Okinawa. And, I heard all kinds of nonsense from Isshin-Ryu Sensei. Oh, I went there and I spent a week there and all he had us doing was running and doing Seisan. Well, I went there for 7 days and I did a lot more than that. Okay, I vividly remember Seisan, Seiuchin, Nahanshi, Sanshin, Chatnyara no Sai, Tokomini no Kun. All right. Again, went over those kata. He made some excellent corrections on me. Biggest correction he made was the focus point of the punch, not the solar plexus, but that line. Okay, and also about keeping my back straight. Corrected my stances, my Nahanshi, Seisan, Seiuchin. Showed me when I first did Seisan in his dojo, he said to me, why are you doing Seisan like a white belt? And I've talked about this on other videos, so I'm not going to mention it again. But, he said, why are you still stacking? That's for beginners. You're a black belt now. You don't stack anymore. But, sadly, when I see a lot of the first generation students, almost all of them always stack. All right. So again, indicates that there's levels of kata. And if you're only there 6 to 13 months, maybe you're not learning those levels. All right. My first experience in Okinawa was great. I mean, he took me sightseeing all over the island, which was fantastic. Drove me to the airport, which I thought was, amazing that the headmaster would take the time to drive me to the airport. And my experience was fantastic. And like I said, I can't account for other people's experience. If you went there and maybe on your trip, he had you working mostly on Seisan, well, maybe you need to take a hard look at yourself. Maybe there's a reason he's doing that. All right. And if you're complaining about the run, well, maybe you need to get in a little bit better shape. All right. So, again, my experience going to Okinawa is I've learned something every time I've gone. He had a profound effect on my martial arts studies in general, of training with people that were better than me and creating my own strong Isshin-Ryu, which in the end finally led me to go back to China, right? So I went back to China and I studied Chen style Taiji Chuan practical method with my Taiji master, Chen Zhanghua, instilling principles that maybe because of karate going in the direction of sport so much were lost. There's nothing new I'm doing in Isshin-Ryu. What I'm doing is I'm rediscovering things. I'm bringing those principles from China back into the art, all right? And then my study of Shihei Kwan with Master Lu Changyi, all right? Feeding Crane Kung Fu. They have Sanshin, very different from our Sanshin. So again, those concepts, that concepts of Fajin, of generating the power by shaking the waist, I brought that back into my Isshin-Ryu. So I'll leave you with this in terms of that was two things. One, Walter Van Gilson is a first generation student, attended one of my seminars one time and said to me, Mike, you're doing what some of us should have done. We should have looked at China more, but you're doing it, and that's very important. Keep doing your research. And the other thing I'll say is, my relationship with Master Kichiro Shimabuku has been nothing short of amazing. I mean, I met him in '81, so obviously it's a long time. I was only a brown belt when I met him. I really met him and got to know him better in '85, which is still a very long time ago, all right? And he's treated me like gold. And all I've done is train and, send him a few memberships here and there. And one of my guys makes black belt. I send for memberships, black belt certificates. I've done some other things for him. I run the website, which, by the way, there'll be a new IWK website coming up in the next couple of months. We're in the process of creating a new one. All right. I know there's some problems with the old one, so we're creating a new one. But I just got to say, Master Shimabuku has been outstanding to me. And you won't hear me say anything negative about him. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a little bit of a trip down memory lane, but I thought maybe some people might find it interesting, my first experience going to Okinawa, and the fact that I'd kept that journal and written a lot of it down. I thought maybe people would find it interesting. So I hope you did. I hope you don't mind me reminiscing a little bit. And please click the like button. Please share the videos, subscribe, consider becoming a member, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Take care.